Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's Stories. We now return to Guards by Terry Pratchett. Part 9. By day, the library buzzed with activity. Vimes moved through it, diffidently. Diffidently, modest or shy because of a lack of self-confidence. Vimes moved through it diffidently. Strictly speaking, he could go anywhere in the city, but the university had always held that it fell under thaumaturgical law. Thaumaturgical, the working of wonders or miracles, magic. But the university had always held that it fell under thaumaturgical law, and he felt it wouldn't be wise to make the kind of enemies where you were lucky to end up the same temperature, let alone the same shape. He found the librarian hunched over his desk. The ape gave him an expectant look. "Haven't found it yet, sorry," said Vimes. "Enquiries are continuing, but there is a little help you can give me." "Walk?" "Well, this is a magical library, right? I mean, these books are sort of intelligent. Isn't that so? So, I've been thinking. I bet if I got in here at night, they'd soon kick up a fuss, because they don't know me. But if they did know me, they'd probably not mind. So whoever took the book would have to be a wizard, wouldn't they? Or someone who works for the university, at any rate." The librarian glanced from side to side, then grasped Vimes's hand and led him into the seclusion of a couple of bookshelves. Only then did he nod his head. "Someone they know?" A shrug, and then another nod. "That's why you told us, isn't it? Ook? And not the University Council? Ook? Any idea who it is?" The librarian shrugged. A decidedly expressive gesture for a body which was basically a sack between a pair of shoulder blades. "Well, it's something. Let me know if any other strange things happen, won't you?" Vimes looked up at the banks of shelves. "Stranger than usual, I mean." "Ook?" "Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet a citizen who regards it as their duty to assist the watch." The librarian gave him a banana. Vimes felt curiously elated as he stepped out into the city's throbbing streets again. He was definitely detecting things. They were little bits of things, like a jigsaw. No one of them made any real sense, but they all hinted at a bigger picture. All he needed to do was find a corner or a bit of an edge. He was pretty certain it wasn't a wizard, whatever the librarian might think. Not a proper, paid-up wizard. This sort of thing wasn't their style. And there was, of course, this business about the lair. The most sensible course would be to wait and see if the dragon turned up tonight, and try and see where. That meant a high place. Was there some way of detecting dragons themselves? He'd had a look at Cut-Me-Own-Throat Dibbler's dragon detectors, which consisted solely of a piece of wood on a metal stick. When the stick was burned through, you found your dragon. Like a lot of cut-me-own-throat's devices, it was completely efficient in its own special way, while at the same time being totally useless. There had to be a better way of finding the thing than waiting until your fingers were burned off. The setting sun spread out on the horizon like a lightly poached egg. The rooftops of Ankh-Morpork sprouted a fine array of gargoyles, even in normal times. But now they were alive, with as ghastly an array of faces as ever was seen outside a woodcut about the evils of gin drinking among the non-woodcut buying classes. Many of the faces were attached to bodies holding a fearsome array of homely weapons that had been handed down from generation to generation for centuries, often with some force. From his perch on the roof of the watch house, Vimes could see the wizards lining the rooftops of the university, and the gangs of opportunists, horde researchers waiting in the streets, shovels at the ready. If the dragon really did have a bed somewhere in the city, then it would be sleeping on the floor tomorrow. From somewhere below came the cry of Cut-Me-Own-Throat Dibbler, or one of his colleagues selling hot sausages. Vimes felt a sudden surge of civic pride. There had to be something right about a citizenry which, when faced with catastrophe, thought about selling sausages to the participants. The city waited. A few stars came out. Colin, Nobby, and Carrot were also on the roof. Colin was sulking because Vimes had forbidden him to use his bow and arrow. These weren't encouraged in the city, since the heft and throw of longbows arrows could send it through an innocent bystander 100 yards away, rather than the innocent bystander at whom it was aimed. "That's right," said Carrot. "The Projectile Weapons, Civic Safety Act 1634. "Don't you keep on quoting all that sort of stuff," snapped Colin. "We don't have any of them laws anymore. That's all old stuff. It's all more, what's name now? Pragmatic." "Law or no law," said Vimes, "I say put it away." "But Captain, I was a dab hand at this," protested Colin. "Anyway," he added peevishly, "a lot of other people have got them." That was true enough. Neighboring rooftops bristled like hedgehogs. If the wretched thing turned up, it was going to think it was flying through solid wood with slots in it. You could almost feel sorry for it. "I said put it away," said Vimes. "I'm not having my guards shooting citizens, so put it away." "That's very true," said Carrot. "We're here to protect and to serve, aren't we, Captain?" Vimes gave him a sidelong look. He said. Yes, that's right." On the roof of her house on the hill, Lady Ramkin adjusted a rather inadequate folding chair on the roof, arranged the telescope, coffee flask, and sandwiches on the parapet in front of her, and settled down to wait. She had a notebook on her knee. Half an hour went by. Hails of arrows greeted a passing cloud, several unfortunate bats, and the rising moon. "Bugger! This for a game of soldiers," said Nobby eventually. "It's been scared off." Sergeant Colin lowered his pike. "Looks like it," he conceded. "And it's getting chilly up here," said Carrot. He politely nudged Captain Vimes, who was slumped against the chimney, staring moodily into space. "Maybe we ought to be getting down, sir," he said. "Lots of people are." Said Vimes, without moving his head. "Could be coming on to rain too," said Carrot. Vimes said nothing. For some minutes he had been watching the Tower of Art, which was the center of Unseen University and reputedly the oldest building in the city. It was certainly the tallest. Time, weather, and indifferent repairs had given it a gnarled appearance, like a tree that has seen too many thunderstorms. He was trying to remember its shape, as in the case with many things that are totally familiar. He hadn't really looked at it for years. Now he was trying to convince himself that the forest of little turrets and crenellations at its top looked just the same tonight as they had done yesterday. It was giving him some difficulty. Without taking his eyes off it, he grabbed Sergeant Collins' shoulder and gently pointed him in the right direction. He said, "Can you see anything odd about the top of the tower?" Collins stared up for a while and then laughed nervously. "Well, it looks like there's a dragon sitting on it, doesn't it?" "Yes, that's what I thought." Only when you sort of look properly, you can see it's just made up out of shadows and clumps of ivy and that. I mean, if you half close one eye, it looks like two old women in a wheelbarrow." Vimes tried this. "Nope," he said. "It still looks like a dragon. A huge one, sort of hunched up and looking down. Look, you can see its wings folded up." "Beg pardon, sir. That's just a broken turret giving the effect." They watched it for a while. Then Vimes said, "Tell me, Sergeant, I ask in a spirit of pure inquiry, what do you think's causing the effect of a pair of huge wings unfurling?" Colin swallowed. "Nope." "I think that's caused by a pair of huge wings, sir," he said. "Spot on, Sergeant." The dragon dropped. It wasn't a swoop. It simply kicked away from the top of the tower and half fell, half flew straight downwards, disappearing from view behind the university buildings. Vimes caught himself listening for the thump. And then the dragon was in view again, moving like an arrow, moving like a shooting star, moving like something that has somehow turned a 32 feet per second plummet into an unstoppable upward swoop. It glided over the rooftops at little more than head height, all the more horrible because of the sound. It was as though the air was slowly and carefully being torn in half. The watch threw themselves flat. Vimes caught a glimpse of a huge, vaguely horse-like features before it slid past. "Sodding arseholes," said Nobby from somewhere in the guttering. Vimes redoubled his grip on the chimney and pulled himself upright. "You are in uniform, Corporal Nobbs," he said, his voice hardly shaking at all. "Sorry, Captain." "Sodding arseholes, sir." "Where's Sergeant Colin?" "Down here, sir, holding on to this drain pipe, sir." "Oh, for goodness sake, help him up, Carrot." "Gosh," said Carrot, "look at it go." You could tell the position of the dragon by the rattle of arrows across the city. and by the screams and gurgles of all those hit by the misses and ricochets. "He hasn't even flapped his wings yet," shouted Carrot, trying to stand on the chimney pot. "Look at him go!" It shouldn't be that big, Vimes told himself, watching the huge shape wheel over the river. It's as long as a street. There was a puff of flame above the docks, and for a moment the creature passed in front of the moon. Then it flapped its wings once, with a sound like the damp hides of a pedigree herd being slapped across a cliff. It turned in a tight circle, pounding the air a few times to build up speed, and came back. When it passed over the watch house, it coughed a column of spitting white fire. Tiles under it didn't just melt, they erupted in red-hot droplets. The chimney stack exploded and rained bricks across the street. Vast wings hammered at the air as the creature hovered over the burning building. Fire spread down on what rapidly became a glowing heap. Then, when all that was left was a spreading puddle of melted rock with interesting streaks and bubbles in it, the dragon raised itself with a contemptuous flick of its wings and soared away and upwards over the city. Lady Ramkin lowered her telescope and shook her head slowly. "That's not right," she whispered. "That's not right at all. Shouldn't be able to do anything like that." She raised the lens again and squinted, trying to see what was on fire. Down below, in their long kennels, the little dragons howled. Traditionally, upon waking from blissfully uneventful insensibility, you ask, "Where am I?" It's probably part of the racial consciousness or something. Vimes said it. Tradition allows a choice of second lines. A key point in the selection process is an audit to see that the body has all the bits it remembers having yesterday. Vimes checked. Then comes the tantalizing bit. Now that the snowball of consciousness is starting to roll, is it going to find that it's waking up inside a body lying in a gutter with something multiple? The noun doesn't matter after an adjective like multiple. Nothing good ever follows multiple. Or is it going to be a case of crisp sheets, a soothing hand, and a business-like figure in white pulling open the curtains on a bright new day? Is it all over, with nothing worse to look forward to now than weak tea, nourishing gruel, short, strengthening walks in the garden, and possibly a brief platonic love affair with a ministering angel? Or was this all just a moment's blackout, and some looming bastard is now about to get down to real business with the thick end of a pickaxe helve? Are there, the consciousness wants to know, going to be grapes? At this point, some outside stimulus is helpful. "It's going to be all right," is favorite, whereas "Did anyone get his number?" is definitely a bad sign. Either, however, is better than "You two hold his hands behind his back." In fact, someone said, "You were nearly a goner there, Captain." The pain sensations, which had taken advantage of Vimes's unconscious state to bunk off for a metaphorical quick cigarette, rushed back. Vimes said, "Ugh." Then he opened his eyes, there was a ceiling. This ruled out one particular range of unpleasant options, and was very welcome. His blurred vision also revealed corporal knobs, which was less so. Corporal knobs proved nothing. You could be dead and see something like corporal knobs. Ankh-Morpork did not have many hospitals. All the guilds maintained their own sanitariums, and there were a few public ones run by the odder religious organizations, like the Balancing Monks, but by and large medical assistance was non-existent, and people had to die inefficiently, without the aid of doctors. It was generally thought that the existence of cures encouraged slackness, and was in any case probably against nature's way.
"Have I already said where am I?"
said Vimes faintly.
"Yes. Did I get an answer?"
"Dunno where this place is, Captain. It belongs to some posh bint. She said to bring you up here." Even though Vimes's mind appeared to be full of pink treacle, he nevertheless grabbed two clues and wrestled them together. Treacle, a thick, sticky, dark syrup made from partly refined sugar, molasses. Even though Vimes's mind appeared to be full of pink treacle, he nevertheless grabbed two clues and wrestled them together. The combination of rich and up here meant something. So did the strange chemical smell in the room, which even overpowered Nobby's more everyday odors.
"We're not talking about Lady Ramkin, are we?" he said cautiously.
"You could be right. Great big biddy, mad for dragons." Nobby's rodent face broke into the most horrible knowing grin Vimes had ever seen. "You're in her bed," he said. Vimes peered around, feeling the first overtures of a vague panic, because now that he could halfway focus, he could see a certain lack of bachelor softness about the place. There was a faint hint of talcum powder. Talcum, a cosmetic or toilet preparation consisting of the mineral talc in powdered form, typically perfumed. There was a faint hint of talcum powder. "A bit of a boudoir," said Nobby, with the air of a connoisseur.
Hang on a minute," said Vimes. "There was this dragon. It was right over us."
The memory rose up and hit him like a zombie with a grudge. "You all right, Captain?" The talons outspread wide as a man's reach. The boom and thump of the wings, bigger than sails. The stink of chemicals. The gods alone knew what sort. It had been so close he could see the tiny scales on its legs and the red gleam in its eyes. They were more than just reptile eyes. They were eyes you could drown in. And the breath, so hot that it wasn't like fire at all, but something almost solid, not burning things, but smashing them apart. On the other hand, he was here, and alive. His left side felt as though it had been hit with an iron bar, but he was quite definitely alive.
"What happened?" he said.
"It was young Carrot," said Nobby. "He grabbed you and the sergeant and jumped off the roof just before it got us."
"My sides hurt. It must have got me," said Vimes.
"No, I reckon that was where you hit the privy roof," said Nobby, "and then you rolled off and hit the water butt."
"What about Cullen? Is he hurt?"
"Not hurt.
Not exactly hurt. He landed more sort of softly. Him being so heavy, he went through the roof. Talk about a short, sharp shower of... And then what happened? Well, we sort of made you comfy, and then everyone went blundering about and shouting for the sergeant. Until they found out where he was. Of course, then they just stood where they were and shouted, and then this woman come running up yelling, said Nobby.
This Lady Ramkin you're referring to? Said Vimes coldly. His ribs were aching really magnificently now.
Yeah, big fat party, said Nobby, unmoved. Cor, she can't have boss people about. Oh, the poor dear man. You must bring him up to my house this instant. So we did. Best place too. Everyone's running around down in the city like chickens with their heads cut off.
How much damage did it do?
Well, after you were out of it, the wizards hit it with fireballs. It didn't like that at all. Just seemed to make it stronger and angrier. Took out the university's entire Wintershins wing. And that's about it, really. It flamed a few more things, and then it must have flown away in all the smoke.
No one saw where it went?
If they did, they ain't saying. Nobby sat back and leered. Disgusting, really, her living in a room like this. She's got pots of money, Sarge says. She's got no call living in ordinary rooms. What's the good of not wanting to be poor if the rich are allowed to go round living in ordinary rooms? Should be marble, he sniffed. Anyway, she said I was to fetch her when you woke up. She's feeding her dragons now. Old little buggers, aren't they? It's amazing she's allowed to keep them.
What do you mean?
You know, tarred with the same brush and that. When Nobby had shambled out, Vimes took another look around the room. It did indeed lack the gold leaf and marble that Nobby felt was compulsory for people of a high station in life. All the furniture was old, and the pictures on the wall, though doubtless valuable, looked the sort of pictures that are hung on bedroom walls because people can't think of anywhere else to put them. There were also a few amateurish watercolors of dragons. All in all, it had the look about it of a room that is only ever occupied by one person, and has been absent-mindedly moulded around them over the years, like a suit of clothes with a ceiling. It was clearly the room of a woman, but one who had cheerfully and without any silly moping been getting on with her life while all that soppy romance stuff had been happening to other people somewhere else, and had been jolly grateful that she had her health. Such clothing as was visible had been chosen for sensible, hard-wearing qualities, possibly by a previous generation by the look of it, rather than its use as light artillery in the war between the sexes. There were bottles and jars neatly arranged on the dressing table, but a certain severity of line suggested that their labels would say things like rub on nightly rather than just a dab behind the ears. You could imagine that the occupant of this room had slept in it all her life and had been called my little girl by her father until she was 40. There was a big sensible blue dressing gown hanging behind the door. Vimes knew, without even looking, that it would have a rabbit on the pocket. In short, it was the room of a woman who never expected that a man would ever see the inside of it. The bedside table was piled high with papers. Feeling guilty, but doing it anyway, Vimes squinted at them. Dragons was the theme. There were letters from the Cavern Club Exhibitions Committee and the Friendly Flamethrowers League. There were pamphlets and appeals from the Sunshine Sanctuary for Sick Dragons. Poor little Vinny's fires were nearly damped after 5 years' cruel use as a paint stripper, but now, and there were requests for donations and talks and things that added up to a heart big enough for the whole world, or at least that part of it that had wings and breathed fire. If you let your mind dwell on rooms like this, you could end up being oddly sad and full of a strange, diffuse compassion which would lead you to believe that it might be a good idea to wipe out the whole human race and start again with amoebas. Beside the drift of paperwork was a book. Vimes twisted painfully and looked at the spine. It said, Diseases of the Dragon by Sybil Deirdre Olgivanna Ramkin. By Sybil Deirdre Olgivanna Ramkin. He turned the stiff pages in horrified fascination. They opened into another world, a world of quite stupefying problems. Slab throat, the black tups, dry lung, storge, staggers, heaves, weeps, stones. It was amazing. He decided after reading a few pages that a swamp dragon ever survived to see a second sunrise. Even walking across a room must be reckoned a biological triumph. The painstakingly drawn illustrations he looked away from hurriedly. You could only take so much in it. There was a knock at the door. I say, are you decent? Lady Ramkin boomed cheerfully. I've brought you something jolly nourishing. Somehow Vimes imagined it would be soup. Instead, it was a plate stacked high with bacon, fried potatoes, and eggs. He could hear his arteries panic just by looking at it. I've made a bread pudding too, said Lady Ramkin, slightly sheepishly. I don't normally cook much, just for myself. You know how it is, catering for one. Vimes thought about the meals at his lodgings. Somehow the meat was always grey, with mysterious tubes in it. He began, not used to addressing ladies from a recumbent position in their own beds. Corporal Nobbs tells me. And what a colourful little man Nobby is, said Lady Ramkin. Vimes wasn't certain he could cope with this. Colourful? He said weakly. A real character. We've been getting along famously. You have? Oh, yes. What a great fund of anecdotes he has. Oh, yes. He's got that all right. It always amazed Vimes how Nobby got along with practically everyone. It must, he decided, have something to do with the common denominator. In the entire world of mathematics, there could be no denominator as common as Nobby. He said, and then found he couldn't leave this strange new byway. You don't find his language a bit, ripe? Salty? Corrected Lady Ramkin cheerfully. You should have heard my father when he was annoyed. Anyway, we found we've got a lot in common. It's an amazing coincidence, but my grandfather once had his grandfather whipped for malicious lingering. That must make them practically family, Vimes thought. Another stab of pain from his stricken side made him wince. You've got some very bad bruising, and probably a cracked rib or two, she said. If you roll over, I'll put some more of this on. Lady Ramkin flourished a jar of yellow ointment. Panic crossed Vimes's face. Instinctively, he raised the sheets up around his neck. "Don't play silly buggers, man," she said. "I shan't see anything I haven't seen before. One backside is pretty much like another. It's just that the ones I see generally have tails on. Now roll up. Now roll over and up with the nightshirt. It belonged to my grandfather, you know." There was no resisting that tone of voice. Vimes thought about demanding that Nobby be brought in as a chaperone, and then decided that would be even worse. The cream burned like ice. "What is it?" "All kinds of stuff. It'll reduce the bruising and promote the growth of healthy scale." "What?" "Sorry, probably not scale. Don't look so worried." "I'm almost positive about that." "Okay, all done." She gave him a slap on the rump. "Madam, I am captain of the night watch," said Vimes, knowing it was a bloody daft thing to say even as he said it. "Half naked in a lady's bed too," said Lady Ramkin unmoved. "Now sit up and eat your tea. We've got to get you good and strong." Vimes's eyes filled with panic. "Why?" he said. Lady Ramkin reached into the pocket of her grubby jacket. "I made some notes last night," she said, "about the dragon." "Oh, the dragon." Vimes relaxed a bit. Right now the dragon seemed a much safer prospect. "And I did a bit of working out too. I'll tell you this, it's a very odd beast. It shouldn't be able to get airborne." "You're right there." "If it's built like swamp dragons, it should weigh about 20 tons. 20 tons? It's impossible. It's all down to weight and wingspan ratios, you see." "I saw it drop off the tower like a swallow." "I know. It should have torn its wings off and left a bloody great hole in the ground," said Lady Ramkin firmly. "You can't muck about with aerodynamics. You can't just scale up from small to big and leave it at that, you see. It's all a matter of muscle power and lifting surfaces. "I knew there was something wrong," said Vimes, brightening up. "And the flame, too. Nothing goes around with that kind of heat inside it. How do swamp dragons manage it?" "Oh, that's just chemicals," said Lady Ramkin dismissively. "They just distill something flammable from whatever they've eaten and ignite the flame just as it comes out of the ducts. They never actually have fire inside them unless they get a case of blowback." "What happens then?" "You're scraping dragon off the scenery," said Lady Ramkin cheerfully. "I'm afraid they're not very well-designed creatures, dragons." Vimes listened. "They would never have survived at all except that their home swamps were isolated and short of predators. Not that a dragon made good eating. Anyway, once you'd taken away the leathery skin and the enormous flight muscles, what was left must have been like biting into a badly run chemical factory. No wonder dragons were always ill. They relied on permanent stomach trouble for supplies of fuel. Most of their brain power was taken up with controlling the complexities of then digestion, which could distill flame-producing fuels from the most unlikely ingredients. They could even rearrange their internal plumbing overnight to deal with difficult processes. They lived on a chemical knife edge the whole time. One misplaced hiccup and they were geography. And when it came to choosing nesting sites, the females had all the common sense and mothering instinct of a brick. Vimes wondered why people had been so worried about dragons in the olden days. If there was one in a cave near you, all you had to do was wait until it self-ignited, blew itself up, or died of acute indigestion.
You've really studied them, haven't you? He said.
Someone ought to.
But what about the big ones?
Golly, yes. They are a great mystery, you know, she said, her expression becoming extremely serious.
Yes, you said.
There are legends, you know. It seems as though one species of dragon started to get bigger and bigger, and then just vanished.
Died out, you mean?
No, they turned up sometimes, from somewhere full of vim and vigor, and then one day they stopped coming at all. She gave Vimes a triumphant look. I think they found somewhere where they could really be.
Really be what?
Dragons, where they could really fulfill their potential. Some other dimension or something, where the gravity isn't so strong or something.
I thought when I saw it, said Vimes, I thought you can't have something that flies and has scales like that.
They looked at each other. We've got to find it in its lair, said Lady Ramkin.
No bloody flying newt sets fire to my city, said Vimes.
Just think of the contribution to dragon lore, said Lady Ramkin.
Listen, if anyone ever sets fire to this city, it's going to be me.
It's an amazing opportunity. There's so many questions.
You're right there.
A phrase of Carrot's crossed Vimes's mind.
It can help us with our inquiries, he suggested.
But in the morning, said Lady Ramkin firmly.
Vimes's look of bitter determination faded.
I shall sleep downstairs, in the kitchen, said Lady Ramkin cheerfully. I usually have a camp bed made up down there when it's egg-laying time. Some of the females always need assistance. Don't you worry about me.
You're being very helpful, Vimes muttered.
I've sent Nobby down to the city to help the others set up your headquarters, said Lady Ramkin. Vimes had completely forgotten Dye Watch House.
It must have been badly damaged, he ventured.
Totally destroyed, said Lady Ramkin. Just a patch of melted rock, so I'm letting you have a place in Pseudopolis Yard.
Sorry?
Oh, my father had property all over this city, she said. Quite useless to me, really. So I told my agent to give Sergeant Cullen the keys to the old house in Pseudopolis Yard. It'll do it good to be ad.
But that area, I mean, there's real cobbles on the streets. The rent alone, I mean. Lord Veterinary won't.
Don't you worry about it, she said, giving him a friendly pat. Now you really ought to get some sleep. Vimes lay in bed, his mind racing. Pseudopolis Yard was on the Ankh side of the river, in quite a high-rent district. The sight of Nobby or Sergeant Cullen walking down the street in daylight would probably have the same effect on the area as the opening of a plague hospital. He dozed, gliding in and out of a sleep where giant dragons pursued him, waving jars of ointment, and awoke to the sound of a mob.